She was fired for stealing cash from the register. My mother said to my boss, and 32 people on Birch Lane heard her. By Monday morning, my hours were cut. 9 days later, I lost my job at Copper Canyon Pediatric Dental because my parents had told one sentence in the right backyard, to the right woman, with a plate of grilled corn in her hand and enough neighbors standing close enough to repeat it. Then a woman named Denise Calderon, who had nothing to do with my family and no reason to protect me, walked into a room with a rehire file and read one line out loud that ended everything. My name is Tiffany Elaine Mercer. I'm 24 years old. Now let me take you back to Mesa, Arizona, on Saturday, September 9th, 2023. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. The block party started at 4 in the afternoon, and by 6:15 the whole street smelled like lighter fluid, hot dogs, and that sugary watermelon somebody always cuts too early. Birch Lane is one of those older neighborhoods in East Mesa where everybody has lived there either 3 years or 30. My parents, Ronald and Sherry Mercer, had been there 12. They liked being known. They liked being the kind of people who brought folding tables out first and left last, and somehow made every neighborhood event feel like it was happening under their supervision. I was there because my apartment was 12 minutes away on East Brown Road, because my younger brother Nolan still lived at home, and because my new office manager, Paula Hensley, had just moved into the neighborhood in August and happened to live 4 houses down from my parents. I had worked at Copper Canyon Pediatric Dental for exactly 7 weeks. I was still in that stage where I was trying to be on time enough that it looked effortless and helpful enough that I did not seem desperate. If you have ever started over in a job where you really needed things to go right, you know that feeling. Not the ambitious kind, the brittle kind. I was carrying a paper plate with baked beans and one overcooked burger when I saw Paula talking to my mother near the mailbox cluster. Paula had on white capri pants and those tan sandals with the gold buckle. My mother was in a green blouse she only wore when she expected photographs. My father was close enough to hear every word and far enough back to look innocent later. I walked over because that was the normal thing to do. That was what made it work. Paula smiled first. Tiffany, I did not know you and your mother were connected. Before I could answer, my mother put her hand on Paula's forearm and said, very calm, very practiced. We are, unfortunately. I suppose you should know she was fired from Desert Grove Market for stealing cash from the register. We hoped this new office would go better. The room did not explode. People always imagine these moments like a movie, some giant reaction, somebody dropping a glass. That is not what happened. It got still. I remember the hiss from a propane grill at the Sanchez house. I remember a little boy bouncing a red rubber ball 3 driveways down. I remember Paula's face changing by less than an inch. Just enough, I said. That is not true. My mother looked at me with that expression she used when she wanted witnesses to think she was exhausted by me. Tiffany, do not do this here. Paula lowered her plate. Excuse me? You were fired for theft? No, I said. I quit in March. I gave notice. My father finally stepped in, as if he were being dragged into something unfortunate. Sherry, maybe this is not the place. That is one of his favorite moves. He lets the knife go in and then offers a napkin. My mother shook her head once. No, a woman deserves to know who works around children and parents' wallets. There are sentences that leave a bruise because of what they imply. That was one of them. Paula did not answer. She just said, I need to check on something, and walked away toward the Petersons' driveway where the coolers were lined up under a canopy. I stood there holding the plate. My hands had gone cold even though it was 97 degrees outside. My brother Nolan was by the folding chairs, looking at the ground like if he stared hard enough he could disappear. Mrs. Patel from 2 houses over had stopped talking mid-sentence. Someone turned music down from a portable speaker. 7 seconds, I counted them because I needed my brain to do something. I set the plate down on the nearest table and said to my mother, Why would you say that? She looked me straight in the face. Because if I say nothing, then people think I approve of your behavior. I did not scream. I did not cry. Instead, I pulled out my phone and typed the date, time, and names into the Notes app while standing right there. Paula Hensley, Ronald Mercer, Sherry Mercer, Birch Lane Block Party, 6:18 p.m., 30 plus witnesses. Exact words as close as possible. That is the first thing I did right. I left at 6:26. I know because my car, a blue 2014 Hyundai Elantra with the cracked steering wheel cover, connects to Bluetooth the second I start it, and my podcast resumed mid-sentence at 6:27. I drove east on University and then north on Lindsay with all four windows up. I could still smell smoke in my hair. At 7:04, my mother texted me, "I did not mean to embarrass you, but honesty matters." At 7:11, my father texted, "Your mother is concerned because you have not always told the truth." At 7:22, Nolan sent, "I'm sorry, that one made me pull over." I sat in the parking lot of a Circle K on McKellips and read the three texts again under that awful blue-white lot light. I did not answer any of them. I started a folder in my phone called September 9th, screenshots, timestamps, nothing dramatic, just the beginning of a record. By 8:40 that night, two neighbors I barely knew had viewed my Instagram story and then unfollowed me. At 9:16, a hygienist from work, Kelsey Muir, sent, "Hey, random question. Did something weird happen tonight with Paula and your parents?" I asked what she'd heard. She never replied. That is how fast a lie can put shoes on. Now let me take you back to Monday, September 11th at 8:10 in the morning, inside the break room at Copper Canyon Pediatric Dental on East Southern Avenue. The room smelled like burnt coffee and lemon disinfectant wipes. Somebody had left a yogurt spoon in the sink. I had just clocked in when Paula asked me to step into Dr. Vance Ellison's office. He was one of those dentists who kept framed mission statements and golf photos on the same wall. Paula sat in the guest chair with a yellow legal pad on her lap. Dr. Ellison folded his hands and said, "A concern was brought to our attention over the weekend." I said, "By my mother." Paula looked surprised that I knew that, which told me she had hoped to make this sound more general, more professional, less ugly. Dr. Ellison said, "We are not making any accusations. We are simply taking precautions until things are clarified." "What precautions?" "We are reducing your front desk access for now. No cash drawer, no payment processing, no closing count." "Paula will adjust your schedule for this week," I asked. "Did either of you ask to see any proof before doing this?" Paula said, "Tiffany, your mother was very specific. That sentence taught me more about adults than college ever did." I said, "I have my resignation email from Desert Grove Market. I can send it to you today." Dr. Ellison gave me that sympathetic business face people use when they have already decided the version of you they prefer. "Please do." They cut me from 34 hours to 16 by lunchtime. At 1:34 that afternoon, I emailed Paula my resignation email from March 20th, 2023. Subject line, "Notice of Resignation, Tiffany Mercer." I also attached my final schedule from Desert Grove, my last pay stub, and the text from my old supervisor thanking me for giving 2 weeks. Paula replied at 2:07, received, nothing else. At 5:51 that evening, my mother posted in the Birch Lane Neighbors private Facebook group. I know the exact time because a woman named Charlene Wu took screenshots before the post disappeared. My mother wrote, "As a mother, I believe in accountability. Some of us have had hard experiences with adult children and workplace dishonesty. Be careful who you recommend around your homes and employers." She did not use my name. She did not need to. By Tuesday morning, 3 people had commented. One said, "Thanks for the heads up." One said, "So sorry you're dealing with that." One was my father writing, "Truth is painful, but enabling is worse." I was not a member of that group anymore. My request had apparently expired months earlier, and suddenly I could not see anything. Charlene sent me screenshots at 7:13 a.m. with the caption, "This is about you, right?" Charlene is important to this story because she is the kind of person my mother always underestimated. Quiet women often are. I spent my lunch break in my car under a Palo Verde tree, building a folder in Google Drive. Screenshots from Charlene, Saturday texts from my parents, my March resignation email, pay stubs from Desert Grove, a PDF copy of my employee separation form from March 29th that I found buried in my email from HR. I made subfolders work, family, neighborhood, timeline. I called Desert Grove Market at 2:20. It was the store on East Baseline near Stapley where I had worked customer service for 19 months during community college. The first person who answered transferred me twice before I got Denise Calderon, assistant manager. Her voice was exactly the same. Low, brisk, a little tired. Desert Grove, Denise speaking. Hi, Denise. It is Tiffany Mercer. I used to work front end there. I need a favor, and it is a weird one. She remembered me immediately. You left for the dental office. Yes. What happened? I told her the shortest version. My parents told my new job I was fired for stealing. Silence for 2 seconds. Then, that is not what happened. I know I need records. Denise asked me to hold. I listened to the store music and the beep of checkout scanners in the background. Then she came back and said, I can send your rehire status and separation reason through HR. It may take a day. Your file says voluntary resignation and eligible for rehire. I wrote those words down. Voluntary resignation and eligible for rehire. There are sentences that put air back in the room. If you have ever had that moment where you know everything is about to change, but you still have to survive the next 48 hours first, you know this part. The waiting is its own injury. Stay with me, because Tuesday night is when they got bolder. At 6:42 p.m., Kelsey from work finally texted me back. Paula mentioned there had been concerns about theft at your last job. She was asking if anybody had noticed weird stuff with money. I stared at that message until the screen dimmed. I asked, who did she ask? Kelsey said me and Lauren at least. Maybe Megan too. I'm sorry. I did not answer right away because I wanted what I sent next to be useful, not emotional. Then I typed, thank you, please screenshot this conversation, do not delete it. At 7:10, I got an email from Paula telling me not to come in Wednesday because the schedule had changed. At 7:16, the office payroll app updated. My hours for the week went from 16 to 8. Wednesday morning, I called my friend Marissa Sloan, who is not a lawyer but works intake for a personal injury firm in Tempe and knows how to think in records. I was making instant coffee in my apartment and burned my thumb on the kettle because my hands were shaking. Marissa said, okay, stop talking like a daughter and start talking like a person building a case. What can be proven? Saturday, quote, witnesses, schedule cuts, Facebook post, work gossip, my old job file. Good. Also get your bank statements from Desert Grove dates if you can. If they say you stole from a register, show a clean end to the employment period. Ask HR for your final separation coding and write down every call, every text, every name. I said, I'm not taking them to court over this. She said, I did not say court. I said records. That became my rule, not feelings records. On Thursday, September 14th at 10:12 in the morning, Denise emailed me a PDF on Desert Grove letterhead. Employee Tiffany Mercer. Last day worked, March 29th, 2023. Separation reason, voluntary resignation, rehire eligibility. Yes. There was also a second page, a scan of my signed exit checklist with her initials in blue ink and the district HR coordinator's name, Brandy Keeler, at the bottom. I forwarded both pages to Paula and Dr. Ellison at 10:17. At 1:53, Paula replied, thank you. We are still reviewing what? How much damage they could do before admitting they were wrong, apparently. Friday came, then Monday, then Tuesday, September 19th. At 3:06 in the afternoon, Paula asked me to come into the office after the last patient left. The cleaning machine was running in Operatory 3 and I could smell mint polish and that chalky fluoride smell that sticks to your throat. Dr. Ellison did not sit this time. He stood by the window. Paula said, we have decided to end your employment effective today. I asked, for what reason? She looked down at her notes. Not a fit, because my mother lied to you at a block party. Dr. Ellison said, we are not discussing family matters. I said, you cut my access after the accusation. You asked coworkers whether I had done anything weird with money. You ignored the records from my last job. This is about the accusation. Paula said very carefully, there has been a loss of trust. I laughed once. Not because it was funny, because sometimes your body has no better option. I asked for the reason in writing. Paula said they do not provide that. I asked for my final paycheck date, Friday. I asked when my benefits ended. End of month, I asked if I could collect my mug and sweater from the break room. She said yes. I walked out carrying a canvas tote with my cardigan, my lavender hand cream, and the little ceramic mug that said nice teeth, nice life. Kelsey was near sterilization and looked like she wanted to say something. She did not. That is how long it took them to erase me. 10 days. Now let me take you back to that same Tuesday night, September 19th at 7:48 p.m. When I finally heard the voicemail, my father left my old store. Denise called me from her personal number after her shift. I was sitting on my kitchen floor because I had not yet brought myself to unpack the tote from work. She said, "Tiffany, I think you need this." I should have mentioned it sooner. My stomach dropped before she even finished. She told me that on Monday, September 11th, the day after the block party, a man had called Desert Grove asking to confirm details about my theft termination because her new employer may be asking questions. Denise recognized the voice by the end of the call because my father had picked me up from closing shifts more than once, and because some voices carry the same shape even when they try to sound official. She had written the number down on a sticky note because the call irritated her. She still had it in the top drawer of her desk. It matched my father's cell. I asked, "Did he say his name?" "No. He said he was trying to help a dental office avoid a bad hire." My father had called my old job to launder the lie. Denise also told me something else. She had mentioned the call to another manager, Curtis Bell, who said, "If that is her family, do not get involved." So she had stayed quiet for a week, not because she believed him, because she did not want trouble. Every story like this has a silent person in it. Someone who knows just enough to stop the damage and chooses comfort instead. Denise became important because she stopped being that person. I asked if she would put what happened in an email. She said, "I cannot send internal recordings, but I can write what I remember and what number called." At 8:16, she did. Her email said, "On Monday, September 11th, 2023, at approximately 11:22 a.m., I received a phone call at Desert Grove Market from a male caller asking to confirm that former employee Tiffany Mercer had been terminated for register theft. I told the caller that was not correct and that her file reflected voluntary resignation. I wrote down the incoming number at the time because I found the call inappropriate. The number was, and then my father's number. I read it 3 times. Then I saved it in 3 places. If you have ever had that moment where your body goes completely calm because the thing hurting you has finally taken a shape you can hold, you know what I mean? Not peace, structure. And before I tell you what I did with that email, please like and subscribe if you're connecting with this story. It really helps the channel and it helps more women find these stories before they think they are crazy for documenting what happened to them. The next morning, Wednesday, September 20th, I drove to the Mesa Public Library branch on Dobson because I needed free printing and quiet. Libraries smell like dust, old carpet, and printer toner, and that morning it felt holier than church. I printed everything: the resignation email, the rehire form, the exit checklist, the screenshots from Birch Lane neighbors, Kelsey's text, Denise's email about my father's call, the schedule screenshots showing my hours dropped from 34 to 16 to 8, my termination notice from the payroll app, my final paycheck amount, $486.20. That was all that remained of a job I had counted on for rent. I made a packet with tabs, Section 1, false accusation, Section 2, work consequences, Section 3, proof from old employer, Section 4, ongoing smear campaign. Marissa met me at a coffee shop on Main Street at noon and flipped through the whole thing like she was checking a file before intake. She said, "You have 3 audiences, pick carefully. My old job, my former boss, my neighborhood. And your parents' church if they used it there." I looked up. "Why would you say that?" She pointed to the Facebook screenshots. "People like this do not keep a lie in one room. They carry it to rooms where they are trusted." She was right. I hated that she was right. That Thursday, September 21st at 6:20 in the evening, Nolan called me from the side yard at my parents' house. I could hear cicadas and my father coughing in the background. Nolan never liked conflict. He sounded like he was apologizing just for dialing. He said, "Mom told people at church too." I closed my eyes. Which church? Redemption Hills, Sunday coffee area after service. She told Deacon Ellis and Mrs. Faber that your office had to be warned because of what happened at the store. Dad was standing there. "Why are you telling me now?" he said. "Because I thought they would stop." I did not yell at him. I wanted to. I did not. I just wrote down the names. Deacon Marcus Ellis, Ruth Faber, Sunday, September 17th, approximately 10:45 a.m. That night, I emailed the church office and asked for a meeting with Deacon Ellis about a false statement being spread about me by members. I attached the Desert Grove Rehire form and one screenshot from the neighborhood group. Not everything, just enough. Friday morning, I got a call from Deacon Ellis himself. His voice was formal and tired. He said, "Ms. Mercer, I would like to understand this clearly before anyone speaks further. Can you come by Monday at 5?" I said yes. I spent the weekend applying for jobs and eating almost nothing. It is strange what your body does when your name is unstable. I would open Indeed, upload a resume, answer questions about customer service and software, and then stop halfway through, because all I could think was, what if they call someone who has heard it? What if this follows me into the next room too? On Sunday afternoon, my mother sent me a text. "You have made yourself very difficult to defend." I answered for the first time since the block party. "You do not need to defend me. You need to stop lying." She replied 3 minutes later, "Your choices created this." I screenshotted that too. Monday, September 25th, was the first time I put everything in front of someone with authority who had not already decided to protect them. Redemption Hills was on Power Road in a beige stucco building that always smelled faintly like copier ink and coffee from the fellowship hall. Deacon Ellis met me in a small office with two fake plants and a wooden cross on the wall. Ruth Faber was there too, which told me he took this seriously enough to add a witness. I laid out the packet. He read slowly. Ruth put her reading glasses on and reached for the screenshots. When she got to the Facebook post, she said, "Oh, not loud, not dramatic, just a small sound people make when denial leaves the room." Then I showed them Denise's email about my father's call. Deacon Ellis read that line twice, incoming number, Ronald Mercer's cell. He asked, "Did your parents say this at the neighborhood event in front of your employer?" "Yes." "Did they repeat it here?" "According to my brother, yes." Ruth looked up at me and said, "Your mother told us you admitted it and were trying to rebuild after a youthful mistake." I had not spoken to my mother about Desert Grove in 6 months. There had been no confession because there had been nothing to confess. Deacon Ellis said he would speak to them. I told him to do whatever he thought was right. I was not asking for an apology. I was asking for the lie to stop traveling. Outside in the parking lot, I sat in my car and cried for the first time. Not because I was weak, because until then I had not heard the full shape of what they had built. They had not only called me a thief, they had also created a fake redemption story for me and handed it to other adults like a community service update. There are humiliations you can survive privately. This was not that kind. Now let me take you back to Thursday, September 28th at 6:30 p.m. in the fellowship room at Redemption Hills, where the truth finally landed in front of people my parents cared about. Deacon Ellis had asked me to come because, in his words, there needs to be a correction made where the statement traveled. He did not tell me who else would be there. When I walked in, I smelled powdered creamer, old carpet, and the cinnamon candles the women's ministry always sold in the fall. There were 14 people in the room: Deacon Ellis, Ruth Faber, two other church board members, my parents, Nolan, Mrs. Faber's husband, three women from the hospitality team, and, to my surprise, Denise Calderon from Desert Grove in black slacks and a navy blouse, holding a manila folder. I had not asked her to come. Deacon Ellis had called the store after reading her email and invited her as an independent witness. That matters. It was never going to mean enough if it came only from me. My mother sat with her hands folded on the table like a principal about to discuss standards. My father would not look at me. Nolan looked pale. Deacon Ellis opened with a prayer, because of course he did. Then he said, "We are here because specific statements were made about Tiffany Mercer being terminated for theft from a previous employer, and those statements appear to have affected her work and standing in the community. We need the truth." My mother spoke first, controlled, smooth, practiced. I was sharing a concern as a parent. If I was mistaken on exact wording, I regret that, but Tiffany has had instability. I said nothing. Deacon Ellis turned to Denise. "Ms. Calderon, can you tell us your role?" Denise set the folder down and said, "I was assistant manager at Desert Grove Market in Mesa when Tiffany Mercer worked there from August 2021 through March 2023. What was the reason for her separation?" Denise opened the folder and read directly from the HR page. Voluntary resignation, eligible for rehire. No one moved. Then she held up the signed exit checklist. This is her separation paperwork dated March 29, 2023, with my initials and district HR approval. There was no theft investigation, no shortage write-up, and no termination. My mother's mouth parted slightly. That was all. Deacon Ellis asked, "Did anyone contact your store after the recent neighborhood event?" Denise said yes. On Monday, September 11th, at approximately 11:22 a.m., I received a call from a male caller trying to confirm that Tiffany had been fired for register theft. I told him that was false. I wrote down the number. She handed the paper to Deacon Ellis. He looked at it, then at my father. "This is your number, Mr. Mercer." My father finally said. I may have been trying to clarify what Sherry believed had happened. One broken sentence. That was all he had. Denise did not react to him. She just added, "I considered the call inappropriate enough to note it at the time." The room went quiet. I counted again. 5 seconds this time. Then Ruth Faber, who had sat through all of this with her glasses low on her nose, said, "Sherry told us Tiffany had admitted stealing and was trying to rebuild her life. Did that happen?" Denise answered before I could, "No, it was the cleanest moment of my life." If you have ever waited for someone outside the family to say the thing you already knew, you know why that matters. Truth sounds different when it comes from a person with no emotional debt in the room. And this is where my mother made the mistake that finished her. She said, "Well, perhaps we were told that by the dental office," except my boss had never said any such thing to her. He had only listened. That sentence was new and stupid. Deacon Ellis looked at me. "Do you have something regarding the dental office?" I slid over the printed schedule changes, the text from Kelsey, and my termination screenshot from September 19th. I did not give a speech. I just put the pages in front of him in order. He read for about 30 seconds. Then he asked, "Your hours were reduced 2 days after the block party, and your employment ended 9 days after." "Yes. And Ms. Hensley from that office lives in your neighborhood." "Yes." Ruth reached for Kelsey's screenshot and read aloud. "Paula mentioned there had been concerns about theft at your last job. She was asking if anybody had noticed weird stuff with money." My mother's face changed then, not guilt, calculation. She was trying to figure out which room still belonged to her. It did not. Deacon Ellis folded his hands and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer, you repeated a false accusation in multiple community settings, and Mr. Mercer appears to have tried to validate it by contacting the previous employer. Tiffany lost her job. This cannot stay uncorrected." My mother said very softly, "What exactly do you expect?" He answered with specifics. That is another reason I remember him clearly. He did not float above the problem. He named the remedy. He said they were to send a written correction to the Birch Lane Neighbors Group administrator and the Hospitality Ministry mailing list, stating that Tiffany had not been fired for theft, and that the earlier statement was false. He said they were to stop repeating any version of the story immediately. He said if they refused, they would be removed from volunteer leadership and asked not to represent the church publicly. My father blinked at the table. My mother said nothing. Then Denise, who had already done more than anyone had the right to ask, said one more thing. "For what it is worth, if Tiffany ever reapplies at Desert Grove, I would hire her." I had been keeping that folder for 11 months, actually less than 3 weeks, but it felt like another calendar. After the meeting, Nolan caught me in the parking lot under the yellow security light. He smelled like dryer sheets and the peppermint gum he always chewed when he was nervous. He said, "I should have told you sooner." "Yes," I said. He nodded once. "I know." I went home and sat at my kitchen table until after midnight, not moving much, just feeling the room settle. The AC clicked on and off. A dog barked outside. I kept waiting to feel triumphant. Mostly I felt tired, because being right does not put the job back. Now let me take you back to Tuesday, October 3rd at 9:27 in the morning, when the first correction finally appeared. Charlene Wu texted me a screenshot from Birch Lane Neighbors. It was posted by the group admin Meredith Pike, because my mother either could not or would not post it herself. The notice said, "A statement shared recently concerning Tiffany Mercer being terminated from a previous employer for theft was false. Please do not continue to repeat or share this claim. No apology, no names attached to the source of the lie, but the correction existed, which meant it could travel too. At 10:11, Ruth Faber forwarded me the email sent to the hospitality ministry list. It was from my mother. Subject line, correction. Message body, a statement I repeated about my daughter Tiffany's previous employment was incorrect. She was not terminated for theft, and I should not have shared that claim. Short, surgical, probably written under instruction. Then on Friday, October 6th, something happened I had not fully expected. Deacon Ellis called me at 4:40 p.m. and said, "For your records, your parents have been removed from the Winter Outreach Committee and the Neighborhood Welcome Team at church. The board felt that was necessary. That was the first concrete price. Not enough, but real." The second came because Marissa pushed me not to let the lost wages disappear just because I was exhausted. I told her I did not want a giant legal war, she said. Then do the small, obvious thing, add up what their lie cost you. So I did. I made a spreadsheet. Lost scheduled wages from September 11th through October 13th based on the posted hours I had before the accusation. Lost amount after subtracting the final check and one babysitting weekend I picked up for a neighbor. $4,860 even. I mailed my parents a demand letter on October 9th. Not a dramatic one. Plain language. You told my employer I was fired for stealing. You repeated it in the neighborhood group and at church. Dad called my former employer to support the lie. I lost my job. The documents attached show the loss. Pay me $4,860 by October 23rd, or I will take you to small claims. I did not say pursue litigation. I said take you to small claims like a person. My father called that night. I let it ring. He left 2 voicemails. In the first, he said, "This is not how family handles misunderstandings." In the second, he said, "Your mother is under a great deal of strain." I saved both. My mother sent a text that said, "You are trying to extort your own parents." I answered, "No, I am billing you for the damage." They did not pay by October 23rd. So on Tuesday, October 24th, at 1:15 in the afternoon, I went to the Mesa Municipal Court building with a stack of copies, a black pen, and my packet in a binder. The clerk at the window wore a sunflower pin and directed me to the small claims forms. Her nameplate said, Elena Pritchard. I remember that because her voice was kind and because kindness from a stranger can feel almost violent when you have had to be so braced for weeks. I filled everything out in plain English. False accusation to employer, lost wages, attached records. Filing fee paid at 1:42 p.m. My parents were served 3 days later. The hearing was set for Thursday, November 30th, at 9 in the morning. They tried twice to get me to drop it before then. First through my Aunt Colleen, who called on November 7th and said, "Your mother says this has gone far enough." Then through Nolan, who texted, "Dad says they will write a nicer apology if you stop." I told both of them no. If you have ever had family members act like your boundary is the real cruelty, you know that script. They never measure the original harm with the same energy they measure your response. The hearing itself was smaller and less glamorous than people think. Fluorescent lights, gray chairs, a room that smelled like paper and old HVAC. My parents sat together at the front. My mother had a navy blazer on. My father wore the tie he reserves for funerals and tax appointments. They looked offended by the existence of consequences. I had my binder, 3 copies of everything, and Denise on speaker by permission because she could not leave the store in person that morning. Charlene had also written a short statement confirming the Facebook post screenshots came from the neighborhood group before deletion. Kelsey would not appear, but she had texted me, "Please use what I sent. I just cannot be in a room with Paula finding out." Again, another silent person. Not brave enough for all of it. Brave enough for part. The judge was a woman named Marian Solis. She listened more than she spoke, which I appreciated. She asked me to explain the sequence. I did. Saturday accusation, Monday schedule cut, Tuesday workplace gossip, Tuesday following termination, Facebook post, church repetition, Dad's call to old employer, lost wages. My mother interrupted once to say, I was speaking from concern. Judge Solis said, "You were speaking a false fact as though you knew it." Silence. Then Denise, on speaker, confirmed the separation reason and the call from my father's number. Judge Solis asked whether there had ever been any theft issue in my file. Denise said, "No, Your Honor." My father tried the same sentence again. I may have been attempting to clarify information. Judge Solis replied by repeating the false accusation to her previous employer. He had no answer. The judgment came 11 days later in the mail, December 11th, 2023. I won $4,860 plus filing costs. The third concrete price my parents paid on December 27th by cashier's check. My father dropped it at the court payment window rather than hand it to me directly. That felt exactly on brand, even their accountability had to be routed through a counter. What mattered more to me, though, came in January, on Tuesday, January 9th, 2024, at 10:18 a.m. Denise emailed me a job posting for assistant front-end lead at Desert Grove's newer location in Gilbert. She wrote, "If you want this, I will recommend you." I applied that afternoon, interviewed the following Monday, started on February 5th at $19 an hour, which was $1.75 more than the dental office had paid me. My mother sent me a birthday text in March, "Thinking of you today." I did not answer. My father mailed a card at Easter with $20 in it, as if we were all 8 years old and nothing had happened. I shredded the envelope and donated the cash to the food pantry by my apartment. People ask whether I have forgiven them. I do not know what they mean when they ask that. If they mean, have I stopped waking up some nights hearing around children and parents' wallets in my mother's voice? No. If they mean, do I believe a cashier's check and a correction email rebuilt what they broke? Also no. If they mean, am I still waiting for them to become different people? Definitely no. What I did get back was my own name. When people in that neighborhood hear my mother's name now, some of them think about the correction post. At church, she no longer runs the welcome team. My father no longer gets to play the reasonable man who just asks questions because there is a written record showing what one of those questions cost. And in a file drawer at Desert Grove under my employee number, there is still a clean separation form that says exactly what happened. Voluntary resignation, eligible for rehire. That sentence fed me more than their apology ever could. I still see Nolan sometimes. Usually for coffee on Saturday mornings at Jared's on Main, we talk about normal things. His classes, my work schedule, a movie he liked. Once in a while he says he is sorry again. I let him say it. I do not help him feel better about it. As for my parents, I have not been back to Birch Lane for a block party since. Last summer, on June 15th, Charlene sent me a photo of the tables set up in the street and wrote, "Quieter without your mother running things." I believed her. There is one last detail I keep because details matter. The paper plate I was holding when my mother said it had baked beans, one burger, and a slice of supermarket angel food cake with strawberries. I never ate any of it. I left it on a folding table by the mailbox cluster at 6:24 p.m. and drove away smelling smoke and sugar and humiliation. And yet that is not the smell I remember most now. It is printer toner in the library on Dobson. It is old carpet in the church office. It is Denise's navy blouse carrying in a little trace of grocery store cold air when she walked into that fellowship room with a manila folder and no interest in family politics. Those are the smells of my life after the lie. I won quietly. They paid specifically. That is sometimes the closest thing to justice you get. And no, we are not healed. We are simply documented.